Once during my childhood, a school friend brought me a copy of Legacy of Kain, Soulreaver. The cover depicted a ghoul figure with glowing eyes and a face hidden by a cloak. I was immediately intrigued. "Who is that?" I asked my friend. He replied, "That's Raziel. He was a vampire until his master Kain killed him out of jealousy for his wings. Now he's returned to life to take revenge." Wow, I thought. That's so cool. I was a kid and truly believed that nothing could be cooler than vampires, so with great excitement I took the game home to play. However, I never actually finished it. I'd like to believe I made it at least halfway through, but it seems I got stuck near the very beginning and ended up returning the game to my friend rather quickly. Funny enough, 25 years later, when I saw the news about the Remastered's release, I felt almost the same emotion I had as a kid. I once again wanted to step into the role of the mysterious wraith, Raziel, to discover his story. Who was he before? What became of him afterward? I felt drawn back into the dark world of Nosgoth, eager to uncover its secrets. Now, having completed both games, I can say I'm glad I had the chance to experience them again, this time as an adult. There's no way I could have fully appreciated the scope of the story and the depth of its characters at such a young age. This game is much more than just a vampire adventure. But let's break it down step by step. This review is spoiler free and based on the impressions of someone who managed to go 25 years without knowing any details about the Legacy of Kain universe. Let's start with Legacy of Kain, Soulreaver. The first part of the Soulreaver duology was originally released in 1999 for the PlayStation and PC, and slightly later in 2000 on the Dreamcast. We play as Raziel, a former lieutenant of the powerful vampire Kain. The opening cinematic shows Kain betraying Raziel, and along with Raziel's brethren, condemning him to a gruesome death by casting him into the Lake of the Dead. However, centuries later, Raziel returns as a decayed wraith, his wings torn, his lower jaw missing, and sets out on a journey throughout Nosgoth to seek revenge on Kain. At first glance, it seems like a straightforward tale of vengeance, and to some extent it is. The concept of revenge is easy to grasp, and it's not hard to sympathize with Raziel's desire for retribution, especially since the characters he will confront have long since lost their former nobility. Over the years Raziel spent decaying at the bottom of the lake, they transformed into true monsters. The same fate befell the world itself. Chaos, decay, and death are everywhere. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of destruction, and the only way to stop its downfall seems to be the death of Kain and his followers. However, the further we progress, the more questions we begin to ask. Beneath the surface of a revenge story lies something much deeper, and just when we start to realize that we've been viewing the events through a narrow lens, seeing only a small part of the bigger picture, the game ends with the words "to be continued."
Oh, come on!
Fortunately for us, we no longer have to wait for the next installment to be released. We can simply return to the menu and launch the next game. The world of Legacy of Kain Soulreaver is a network of interconnected locations, each gradually revealing itself as the game progresses. The core gameplay structure is reminiscent of The Legend of Zelda. As we explore the world, we discover key story-driven dungeons or areas, each culminating in a boss battle. Upon defeating the boss, Raziel acquires a new ability that grants access to previously unreachable areas. While the game allows for free movement between locations and offers optional areas where we can find magical glyphs and other upgrades, the main story remains linear. This balance between open exploration and guided progression makes the experience engaging, encouraging players to search for secrets and ways to empower the hero. At the same time, it raises a question: how does the game guide us along the story? Upon gaining a new ability, Raziel, or Elder God, who serves as our guide through the world, provides hints about the next objective. There are no arrows, mini-maps with highlighted paths, or quest journals pointing directly where to go. The game never holds your hand. If you forget or miss a clue, you can return to the hub zone where the Elder God will repeat it.
In the furthermost canyon of Nosgoth's frozen wastes, the hushed silences embrace an ancient enigma. In the bowels of this labyrinth, your master awaits.
I understand nothing.
I really appreciate this system. Every time I discovered a new path leading to an unexplored area, I felt like a true pioneer, uncovering new ground. However, I must admit that towards the end of the game, I got seriously stuck trying to find Dumas' lair. I spent around 2 hours searching, during which I explored several additional locations, but made no real progress towards the story objective. Eventually I gave up and checked the guide. Of course, after reading where I needed to go, I facepalmed. It was obvious and right under my nose the whole time, but this made me think. The game does have a map, but to be completely honest, it's practically useless. I believe the map from the second game would have been a great help here. It doesn't reveal too many details, but gives you a general sense of direction. Sometimes that's all you need. Just point us the right way and we'll figure out the path ourselves. And that path is explored in a completely seamless world. Yes, you heard that right. Back in 1999, Crystal Dynamics achieved a genuine technological marvel by creating a game world without a single loading screen between areas. On top of that, the developers implemented a fast travel system. Each major location has its own unique teleporter, which once activated allows instant travel to that spot. This feature greatly eases exploration and makes backtracking to previously visited zones much more efficient. In terms of world exploration, what makes it even more captivating and unique is the presence of the spectral realm, which Raziel can shift into at any moment. If you thought the material realm of Nosgoth was dark and grotesque, wait until you witness its twisted, otherworldly counterpart. Architecture, shapes, and lines distort, as if you stepped into a nightmarish Tim Burton-esque landscape. The spectral realm plays a crucial role in both games. Firstly, losing all your health in the material realm doesn't mean death, since Raziel is technically already dead. Instead, you're shifted into the spirit world. By consuming enough souls, you can return to the world of the living through the special portals. Notably, if you lose all your health in the spectral realm, you won't die either. You'll simply be sent back to the hub area or the nearest checkpoint in the sequel. But the spectral realm isn't just a failsafe. Its reality warping properties also affect the environment. Structures twist, deform, and open up pathways previously inaccessible in the material realm. This mechanic is central to the game's puzzles and exploration, challenging players to think in multiple dimensions as they progress throughout the Nosgoth's eerie world. Switching between realms is also a key mechanic for solving puzzles, one of the core elements of the game's gameplay loop. Most of the puzzles revolve around block manipulation, where you need to flip, push, insert blocks into specific slots, or use them to create platforms to reach otherwise inaccessible areas. While the variety in puzzles isn't vast, they remain engaging without becoming overly repetitive. The game's pacing is exceptionally well balanced. Exploration and puzzles are interwoven with combat sequences, creating a steady rhythm throughout the experience. The combat system, however, left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, the core fighting mechanics felt somewhat clunky and unrefined. Attacks lacked fluidity, and the animations could use more variety. On the other hand, the finishing moves completely captivated me. They are cinematic, brutal, and incredibly satisfying, adding a layer of spectacle to the otherwise simple combat system. In the first game, we primarily fight various types of vampires. As we all know, vampires can't be simply beaten to death. They require more specialized methods of elimination. They can be destroyed by sunlight, which by the way is critically scarce in the world of Nosgoth, water, fire, and of course the classic method, impalement. Upon acquiring the Soul Reaver, you gain the most powerful weapon in the game. This is one of those rare cases where the reality truly matches the legend. The Soul Reaver can absolutely annihilate your enemies, often concluding battles with spectacular finishing moves. However, the power of this weapon is balanced by a significant restriction. It can only be used when you have full health. Taking even minor damage disables it, forcing you to rely on standard combat tactics. While this mechanic feels fair in theory, it can sometimes be frustrating, especially in situations where there's no suitable environmental weapon nearby to finish off a vampire. In such cases, you may find yourself frequently switching between the spectral and material realms just to regain health and complete the fight. The game also features boss battles, which I found particularly enjoyable because they feel more like puzzle-solving challenges than straightforward combat encounters. This design choice not only helps bypass the technical limitations of the game, but also prevents these fights from becoming repetitive or dull. The only real exception is the final boss battle, which turned out to be the biggest disappointment for me in the entire game. Despite some minor flaws, which shouldn't be judged too harshly considering the game's age, SoulReaver left an unforgettable impression on me. It was evident that the game was crafted with great care. It had a distinctive atmosphere, a unique world, compelling characters, and an absolutely incredible story. I binge played this game and, barely processing what I had just experienced, felt a strong urge to return to the world of Nosgoth and uncover what happened next. So let's talk about SoulReaver 2.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner.
The continuation of the vampire saga was released in 2001 on both PlayStation 2 and PC. The story picks up right where the first game left off. To avoid spoilers, I'll just say that the plot, along with its characters, takes an incredibly gripping turn. Once again, we control Raziel, but his quest for vengeance, along with the character himself, evolves into something far greater, the search for the truth. The Wraith, with his broken wings, starts grappling with deep existential questions. He no longer blindly accepts the intentions of his self-proclaimed allies, protectors, or even enemies.
Tread carefully. There are dark forces at work in this world, bent on subverting your true destiny.
I have no doubt of that. The question is, am I in their presence right now?
Armed with a healthy dose of nihilism, Raziel seeks his path, now moving not only between worlds, but also through time. This allows us to see Nosgoth from various perspectives, each time from a new angle, with different levels of destruction and violence consuming it. The world and the sequence of locations in the second game are presented in a more linear format than in the first, but the key gameplay mechanic remains unchanged. After completing each dungeon, we receive a new form of the SoulReaver, which grants access to previously inaccessible areas. It's noteworthy that all the abilities Raziel acquired in the first game are carried over from the very beginning of the second. This is a refreshing decision, especially in contrast to the common trend in games where heroes' abilities are reset in the sequels, forcing players to start character development from the scratch. This approach not only emphasizes continuity, but also acknowledges the player's efforts, not devaluing their progress from the previous game. As I mentioned earlier, the game introduces a much more convenient map, which marks both the player's current location and the area they need to reach. The map, combined with a more linear world design and a subtle narrative direction, creates an experience where on one hand you always know where to go, and on the other you don't feel like you're being led by the hand like a child. Each area in the game is literally soaked in atmosphere and story, from ancient temples and abandoned fortresses to dense forests and mysterious tombs. Each location has its own often dark, tragic, but still fascinating history. More than once, I found myself thinking that I wanted to stop and examine the ancient frescoes, walk through the streets of Ustenheim, and try to imagine what life was like here before certain events. And partially, the game gives us that opportunity through the time travel. Each gameplay feature from the first game has been expanded here. Puzzles still play a significant role, but this time they go beyond just moving blocks. The puzzles are varied, and as you progress, they gradually become more complex by introducing new mechanics. As a gameplay element, they also serve as an environmental storytelling, adding depth to the world. The combat system hasn't undergone drastic changes, but has become more refined. The Wraith Blade is still powerful, and now available regardless of your health, but each strike with it fills its hunger meter. Once the meter reaches its limit, the blade will start draining Raziel's health. In my opinion, this is a more balanced mechanic, allowing us to save the sword for tougher enemy encounters, without constantly needing to switch to Spectral Realm to recover health and be able to use it. In addition to the soulreaver blade, as in the first game, we can also wield regular weapons, swords, spears, axes, each with its unique finish and move animation. While the first game featured a rich variety of vampires to slay, the second game focuses more on combat against humans, but they're certainly not to be underestimated. Depending on the era you're in, these enemies vary at the threat level. From the less dangerous vampire hunters of the pre-Blood Omen era to the warriors of the Sarafan Order. Along with humans, demons will also stand in your way. These are no less and in some ways even more dangerous opponents, as they cannot be escaped in the spectral realm. Like you, they can shift between dimensions and will relentlessly pursue you, so be cautious. The bosses in the second game are mostly reserved for the finale. Part of me was a little disappointed by this, as the bosses in the first game were diverse and really well designed representatives of their clans. From more or less regular vampires to vampire spiders and amphibious vampires, there was a lot of variety. Unfortunately, this isn't the case here. However, the final battles, especially the climactic fight, left a significant impression on me. Not so much in terms of gameplay, but in terms of the story, perfectly closing the narrative loop. At this point, I really want to emphasize my deep admiration for the story and how it's structured. It's one of those rare cases where the narrative doesn't just support the gameplay, but becomes the star of the entire series. I love how the creators of the game allows the story and characters to be intelligent and thoughtful. They avoid cheap plot twists, guiding the character in ways that the player might not expect. At no point did I feel confused by the protagonist's decision. Where I felt doubt, Raziel showed doubt. Where I felt cautious, Raziel felt cautious. Where I felt anger, Raziel expressed anger. It's such a rarity when a game communicates with you as an equal and treats you as a rational, intelligent person capable of digesting a piece of interesting, meaningful storytelling.
You're a ragged excuse for a savior.
I don't know if the creators understood from very beginning how and where this epic saga would develop, or if they masterfully adapted it as each new game came out, but one thing is for sure. This is one of the most captivating and thrilling stories, not only in video games, but in media overall. I often found myself reflecting on how both games might have been released at the wrong time and on the wrong platform, to truly give its story the credit it deserves. Isn't that ironically fitting, given that the Soul Reaver series, especially the second one, explores themes of fate, free will, and the cyclical nature of time? Equally important, I believe, is not just the story itself, but how it is presented. My respect goes to Amy Hennig for her direction. The dialogue, which I will dare say is Shakespearean in quality, comes to life through an incredible performance by the voice actors. Michael Bell, Simon Templeman, Tony Jay and Richard Doyle delivered a brilliant performance. Their voices not only brought the characters to life, but also elevated the already stunning material to a new level, a level worthy of a theatrical production. By the way, I highly recommend checking out the outtakes from the voice recordings. They are true gems of acting. A huge thanks to Aspire for including this material in the bonus section. It's a truly generous gift for the fans.
Soul Reaver. I feel an obligation to work out since I'm Soul Reaver. So when the time comes I really meet everybody, I'll be able to wear tight black outfits. And they won't feel so terribly disappointed to see that it's the 60-year-old cocker doing this voice.
Among the bonus materials, there is a wealth of great content to sink your teeth into, again pun intended, galleries full of stunning fan art, concept art, renders, the game's soundtrack, lore notes about in-game locations, the script of both games, and perhaps the most mind-blowing, the lost levels, cut from the final version of SoulReaver. While these don't offer interactivity or gameplay, it's like taking a stroll through a museum. We can see what might have been part of the game and appreciate the ambitions of Crystal Dynamics. It's a unique behind-the-scenes look that fans will undoubtedly appreciate. SoulReaver 1 and 2 didn't just remain in my memory as games from my childhood. They became another example of how video games can be true works of art. They demonstrate depth in storytelling, atmosphere, and a unique approach to game design that stands alongside the best in media culture. Returning to Nosgoth after 25 years experienced not just nostalgia, but also deep gratitude for the chance to view the story from a new perspective, understand its complexity, and appreciate its scale. The SoulReaver series deserves a remaster not just for improved graphics, but to give this magnificent saga a second life. These are two dark, beautiful, existential, poetic, and very intelligent games that certainly deserve your attention. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, or don't, but just know it would seriously make my day if you did. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and hey, leave a comment if you feel like it, or just drop a quick hi. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the SoulReaver Remastered collection. Have you played it before, or did Remaster catch your attention? How about Legacy of Kain games? Any favorites? Which one would you love to see get a remaster or a remake? Thanks again for watching, this was Radio Nick, see you next time.